Recommendation 114F. Ensure access to justice by providing appropriate legal advice and support, and including through reasonable and procedural accommodation to persons with disabilities seeking redress and reparation for the alleged violation of their rights covered by this report. 98. Under Part 1 of the Legal Aid, Sentencing and Punishment of Offenders Act 2012, LASPO, cases related to community care, special educational needs, disability discrimination, mental health, and mental capacity are in scope of the Civil Legal Aid Scheme in England and Wales, subject to applicants meeting the relevant statutory means and merits tests. 99. The Government published a post-implementation review of Part 1 of LASPO in 2019, which covers the changes made by LASPO to the legal aid scheme in England and Wales. This review made an objective assessment of the impact of the legal aid changes made by the Act against its original objectives. 100. Alongside this review, the Government published a Legal Support Action Plan, which sets out the future direction of travel following the review. 101. As part of this action plan, in May 2020, changes in legislation were made to remove the requirement for legal aid applicants with debt, discrimination and special educational needs cases to first seek advice through the Civil Legal Advice telephone services, reinstating immediate access to face-to-face legal advice in these cases. 102. The Equality Act 2010 provides access to justice in UK civil courts and employment tribunals for all groups covered under the Act, including disabled people. In line with the principles of the Act, only a person who has been discriminated against or may have been potentially discriminated against can personally seek redress by bringing a case to the relevant court or tribunal. Under the Act, it is not possible to bring a claim on behalf of another person unless as a representative of a disabled person who does not have the capacity to personally make the claim. 103. As well as maintaining current protections in the Equality Act 2010, the Government intends to increase protection for disabled people who rent their accommodation or who do not own the land that they live on, by commencing the remaining parts of Section 36 of the Act. This will place a duty on landlords, landowners, to make reasonable adjustments to the common parts of properties where a disabled resident has requested this. 104. For individuals who have been discriminated against, non-legal advice, support and alternative dispute resolution is available from a variety of sources to assist disabled people with concerns, giving them the opportunity to reach a satisfactory dispute resolution without recourse to a court and all the costs that might entail. 105. In 2021, the UK Government delivered additional investment of £5.4 million for not-for-profit organisations who provide specialist legal advice, such as law centres and a number of other charities. This emergency grant funding supported 72 organisations to meet increases in demand for guidance and advice, and to make the necessary changes to their ways of working in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Advice and support. 106. The Equality Advisory and Support Service, EASS, provides free, bespoke advice and in-depth support to individuals with discrimination concerns, via telephone, text phone or their website. The EASS has the ability to intervene on an individual's behalf with a service provider to help resolve an issue. 107. The Advisory, Conciliation and Arbitration Service, ACAS, provides authoritative and impartial advice free to employees or employers in relation to employment discrimination issues. ACAS also provides employees and employers with early conciliation to help them resolve or settle their workplace dispute without going to court. 108. Law centres are specialists working in their local communities to offer advice, casework and representation to individuals and or groups to defend the legal rights of people who cannot afford a lawyer. 109. Education-related disability discrimination claims by school pupils arising under the Equality Act 2010 are heard by the First-Tier Tribunal, Special Educational Needs and Disability, which also hears special educational needs appeals by children or young people relating to local authority decisions. 110. In addition to this, the Office of the Independent Adjudicator for Higher Education, OIA, is a dispute resolution body for higher education complaints. The OIA accepts complaints from disabled students relating to anything their higher education provider has done or failed to do which amounts to discrimination, providing the student has already raised their concerns with their provider and are unsatisfied with the outcome. The process is free, although any decision of the OIA is not legally binding. Higher education providers who are members of the scheme are, however, expected to comply. 111. The Office for Students, OFS, is the independent regulator for higher education in England and is committed to ensuring equality of opportunity for all students. The OFS registers and regulates individual providers and puts in place conditions of registration designed to ensure that all students, including disabled students, are able to access, succeed and progress from higher education. The OFS is able to impose regulatory penalties on providers that breach these conditions. 112. SOLD, Supporting Offenders with Learning Difficulties, is a Scottish government-funded organisation currently engaged with relevant stakeholders looking at an approach that will assist in identifying and helping people brought into police custody who have communication and additional support needs. Initial work has been completed, with further work with other justice agencies now planned to ensure equal and fair access to justice. Recommendation 114G. Actively consult and engage with persons with disabilities through their representative organisations, and give due consideration of their views in the design, implementation, monitoring and evaluation of any legislation, policy or programmatic action related to the rights addressed in this report. 113. The UK Government recognises the importance of putting the voices of disabled people at the heart of health and disability policy development. To inform the Health and Disability Green Paper, the UK Government engaged with disabled people and their representatives in a series of events to hear their experiences of navigating the benefit system and DWP employment support. 114. The UK Government has continued its development of the Regional Stakeholder Network, RSN, in England. There are 9 regional networks made up of disabled people, their organisations, parents and carers. Each RSN has an independent chair who is well connected in their regions. 115. Several of the RSNs have submitted comprehensive policy submissions to help inform the National Disability Strategy that was published in July 2021. These policy submissions reflect the collective insight and lived experience of their members. One of the regional groups has also undertaken a wider piece of insight gathering that sought views from 400 disabled people in the northwest of England. 116. The UK Government has continued to work closely with the Disability Charities Consortium, DCC. The DCC is a consortium of 9 of the UK's largest disability charities: Business Disability Forum, Leonard Cheshire, MenCap, Mind, National Autistic Society, RNIB, RNID, Scope and Sense. Officials have formally met the DCC numerous times, and have had many one-to-one or smaller group meetings. 117. The experience and insight from disabled people was central in the development of the National Disability Strategy. In early 2021, the UK Disability Survey was launched for disabled people, carers and the wider public to share views and experiences of the important issues impacting disabled people. Over 16,660 people completed the survey, which significantly helps to build the evidence base of key issues, and the insight gained from this will be used during the strategy's implementation. 118. Alongside the UK Disability Survey, the UK Government has also undertaken other engagement practices. Several roundtable discussions were facilitated by RSN chairs and other third sector representatives with disabled people about their experiences in daily life. This experience will be used to help implement the National Disability Strategy. Engagement for clinically extremely vulnerable people. 119. The UK Government continues to engage with charities in delivering both CEV and non-shielded vulnerable (NSV) COVID-19 schemes. This engagement ensures that charities have input into policy formation, messaging formation, and also that important issues can be raised, and in turn that these can be communicated to other government departments and also to supermarkets. 120. During the first few months of the COVID-19 pandemic, a disability forum was held with stakeholders, bringing together voices from across the charity and voluntary sector. 121. More recently, the UK Government has been involved in discussions with the Voluntary and Community Sector Emergencies Partnership, VCSEP, chaired by Independent Age and the Red Cross. In November 2020, the UK Government continued to build on this early engagement activity by setting up its own informal Charities Forum with Independent Age, representing themselves and 14 other smaller charities involved with food access and affordability. 122. The Charities Forum continues to meet every month to discuss ways in which the government can continue to work together with the voluntary sector to ensure the food access needs of disabled individuals are met, especially as we progress through the steps of the Prime Minister's roadmap. 123. The UK Government's Charities Commission will also be used as a forum to inform policy discussions related to food access for vulnerable individuals, and to engage with supermarkets and other stakeholders on these issues. Engagement on transport matters. 124. The Department for Transport, DfT, continues to work closely with the Disabled Persons Transport Advisory Committee, DPTAC, and many other disabled organisations, including through its Inclusive Transport Strategy Group, when formulating policies across all transport modes. This engagement is informing delivery of accessibility improvements through the government's Inclusive Transport Strategy, National Disability Strategy, National Bus and Cycling and Walking Strategies. 125. Passenger service operators are required, under regulation, to engage with disability advisory groups throughout policy and design phases to ensure proposed plans meet the needs of these passengers. 126. DfT's Accessibility Minister meets regularly with disability groups to discuss accessibility, delivery of improvements, and how we can support disabled people during the COVID-19 pandemic. 127. Transport Scotland has committed to a hate crime charter on public transport. In March 2021, there was a soft launch of the charter on the bus and rail network. Other engagement. 128. During the creation of the Autism and Learning Intellectual Disability Transformation Plan, Towards Transformation, the Scottish Government actively engaged with representative organisations in co-designing the plan. Work is ongoing to ensure that strategy leadership and implementation is collaborative and has lived experience at the core of the leadership arrangements. The strategy intends to follow the principles of the Scottish approach, with work being user-led and co-produced. 129. The Welsh Government has a strong network of equality fora with which to consult and engage on a regular basis about issues facing those with protected characteristics in Wales. The ministerial-chaired Disability Equality Forum provided an opportunity for stakeholders to advise the Welsh Government on the key issues that affect disabled people in Wales. It met frequently during the COVID-19 pandemic, ensuring the voices of disabled people were heard. 130. The Northern Ireland Executive has established a programme to develop options for the future delivery of employability programmes and services from 2020 onwards. The disability employment gap is a key driver for this work, and the new approach will prioritise support for those with health conditions and/or disabilities. Engagement with disability support organisations, as well as with disabled people, will be a core element of the programme of work that will inform the new approach and design going forward. 131. The Northern Ireland Executive is also leading the development of a new disability employment strategy, which will align to and deliver upon employment elements within the new disability strategy. Within this development, stages of evidence gathered with key partners and individuals will inform the co-design of a draft strategy and action plan, which will be subject to a public consultation. Recommendation 114H. Take appropriate measures to combat any negative and discriminatory stereotypes and prejudices against persons with disabilities in public and media, including that dependency on benefits is in itself a disincentive of employment. Implement broad mass media campaigns in consultation with organisations representing persons with disabilities, particularly those affected by the welfare reform, to promote them as full rights holders in line with the Convention, and adopt measures to address complaints of harassment and hate crime by persons with disabilities. Promptly investigate these allegations, hold perpetrators accountable, and provide fair and appropriate compensation to victims. Hate crime, online harassment and bullying. 132. The UK Government takes all forms of hate crime seriously, including that targeted at disabled people. The legislative framework to tackle hate crime includes provisions for the court to increase a sentence where the offence was motivated by hostility towards a person's disability. The Law Commission is undertaking a full review of hate crime legislation, including the coverage and approach of current hate crime legislative provisions to ensure it remains effective. 133. The full government response to the Online Harms White Paper consultation was published in December 2020, which sets out the new expectations on companies to keep their users safe online, including that all companies in scope must tackle illegal content on their platforms and protect children from harmful content and activity online. Users and other affected persons will also have access to redress when they encounter harmful content. This will include complaints by those with characteristics such as a disability that have been targeted by the content, and those giving assistance to those who need help to access the complaints process. 134. The Online Safety Bill, which will give effect to the regulatory framework outlined in the full government response to the Online Harms White Paper, was published in draft in May 2021. Pre-legislative scrutiny of the draft bill is underway. 135. The UK Government provided over £2.8 million of funding from 2016 to 2020 for anti-bullying organisations to support schools to tackle bullying. This funding, including projects targeting bullying of particular groups, such as those with special educational needs and disabilities, SEND, along with a project to report bullying online. 136. On the 7th of June 2020, we confirmed an additional £750,000 of funding had been awarded to 3 of these organisations, the Diana Award, the Anti-Bullying Alliance and the Anne Frank Trust, until March 2021, to provide continued support to schools. We are currently procuring a new programme of anti-bullying support for schools, which has an adjusted focus towards protected characteristics, including disability. 137. In Scotland, the Hate Crime and Public Order Scotland Act received royal assent in April 2021, and work is currently underway to develop an implementation plan, including commencement. The Act was developed in response to recommendations by Lord Bracadale's independent review of hate crime legislation in Scotland. Once in force, the Act will consolidate, modernise and extend hate crime legislation, ensuring it is fit for the 21st century Scotland. 138. The Scottish Government continues to engage with a number of DPOs under commitments in the Tackling Prejudice and Building Connected Communities Action Plan. It does this to raise awareness of hate crime and encourage greater reporting of disability hate crimes, improve data and evidence and third-party reporting during the development of the Hate Crime and Public Order Scotland Act 2021. Media literacy. 139. In July 2021, the Government published the Online Media Literacy Strategy, setting out our ambition to improve user media literacy capabilities by supporting organisations to empower users with the skills and knowledge they need to make informed and safe choices online. 140. The strategy is inclusive and has an amplified focus on disabled people, or those who may experience disproportionate amounts of online abuse. 141. We also published the first annual Online Media Literacy Action Plan, which includes funding the rollout of a Train the Trainer programme for teachers and carers of disabled children, to help them to support those they work with to manage their online lives. Campaigns. 142. In 2018 and 2019, the UK Government ran 2 waves of a national public awareness campaign around hate crime, including scenarios of hate crime towards disabled people, to make clear that these are crimes and will not be tolerated. 143. Under the commitments of the Scottish Government's Strategy for Autism 2018 to 2021 priorities, we launched our Different Minds One Scotland campaign in October 2020 to raise awareness and understanding of autism. 144. The campaign will challenge stigma and myths to give the general public a clearer understanding of autism. The campaign was co-developed with autistic people and runs in conjunction with funded third sector projects across Scotland to embed understanding locally. 145. The Scottish Government launched hate crime campaigns in 2017, 2018 and 2020 to raise awareness of hate crime and encourage reporting. The 2020 Letters from Scotland campaign was launched in response to concerns raised, including from DPOs, that there had been an increase in hate incidents, both offline and online, throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. 146. In March 2021, the Welsh Government launched the campaign Hate Hurts Wales to raise awareness and understanding of the impact that hate crime has on individual victims, including disabled people. It encouraged victims and bystanders to report hate crime to help stop it and create a safer Wales. Recommendation 114I. Ensure that in the implementation of legislation, policies and programs, special attention is paid to persons with disabilities living in low income or poverty, persons with disabilities with higher risk of exclusion, such as persons with intellectual, psychological or multiple disabilities, women, children and older persons with disabilities. These measures should be put in place within contributive and non-contributive regimes. 147. The UK Government believes the PSED, as set out in the Equality Act 2010, provides a mechanism for identifying unintended or disproportionate impacts of policies on those with protected characteristics, including disabled people. 148. The UK Government is proposing to create new duties on commissioners in England, clinical commissioning groups, NHS England and local authorities to ensure that there are sufficient community-based services to support people with a learning disability and autistic people. This will further support them to live independently with the right support in their community. 149. The creation of a local at-risk or support register will place a duty on commissioners that every local area should understand and monitor the risk of a crisis at an individual level for people with a learning disability and autistic people. 150. The Think Autism strategy, published in 2014 under the Autism Act 2009, has been refreshed, and we have extended its scope to cover children and young people as well as adults for the first time. It is now called the National Strategy for Autistic Children, Young People and Adults, 2021 to 2026. This is in recognition of the importance of ensuring that autistic people receive the right support, including timely diagnosis from early years and throughout their lives. In March 2019, the UK Government launched a national call for evidence to inform the development of the strategy, which closed on the 16th of May 2019 and received approximately 2,700 responses. 151. The Ministerial Disability Champions were appointed in summer 2020 at the request of the Prime Minister, to help drive the development and delivery of the National Disability Strategy. Meetings are held regularly and are chaired by the Minister for Disabled People. Their aims include contributing to the development and delivery of the strategy, with a personal lead and commitment to championing disabled people within their departments. Ensuring disability inclusivity is a priority in their department, and that their officials work with the Disability Unit and across government to improve the lives of disabled people. 152. In June 2020, Scottish ministers created the Social Renewal Advisory Board, tasked with ensuring that reducing poverty and disadvantage, embedding a human rights-based approach, and advancing equality is central to post-pandemic rebuilding. The board contained representatives from DPOs and worked to ensure that their views were directly heard throughout the engagement process and represented in the final proposals. An initial response to the report was issued by Scottish ministers on the 23rd of March 2021. The final independent report will be considered fully by Scottish Government ministers. 153. In July 2020, Welsh Government ministers announced a COVID-19 commitment for employability and skills. This includes nearly a £40 million investment for over 16s in Wales to ensure that they can access advice and support to find work, pursue self-employment, or find a place in education or training. 154. It includes a 12-month pilot project with a network of disabled people's employment champions, who are disabled people themselves and who have lived experience of the barriers faced in gaining employment. They are working with employers and Business Wales, promoting awareness of the support available. 155. In 2017, the Welsh Government issued its 2017 to 2021 Action Plan, Education in Wales, Our National Mission. The resultant Additional Learning Needs and Educational Tribunal Wales Act, AllNet Act 2018, takes a rights-based approach, as required by the Rights of Children and Young Persons Wales Measure 2011. The accompanying Additional Learning Needs Code for Wales 2021 has been developed by the Welsh ministers with due regard to the requirements of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, UNCRC, and its optional protocols, and the requirements of the UNCRPD. Recommendation 114J. Set up a mechanism and a system of human rights-based indicators to permanently monitor the impact of the different policies and programs relating to persons with disabilities' access and enjoyment of the right to social protection and an adequate standard of living, the right to living independently and being included in the community, and the right to work, in close consultation with persons with disabilities and their representative organisations in all regions and countries that conform the State Party. 156. The EHRC is the UK's independent monitoring and enforcement body of the Equality Act 2010. It has enforcement powers to compel compliance with the Act, including the disability discrimination and accessibility provisions, and to challenge organisations where required. If the EHRC suspects a public body of committing a breach of the discrimination provisions, it can conduct an investigation and take action to ensure the organisation avoids a continuation or repetition of that breach. 157. The government's goal to see 1 million more disabled people in employment between 2017 and 2027 is an outcome measure. It reflects the real-world improvements the UK government wants to see. It is affected by external factors such as the size of the underlying disabled population and overall labour market performance. The 2017 Improving Lives, the Future of Work, Health and Disability Command paper fully acknowledged these factors. It therefore committed to an annual statistical publication which would monitor trends in disability and employment, including movements into and out of work. This was published for the first time in March 2020 and is due to be updated later in 2021. 158. The Office for National Statistics also independently publishes statistics on outcomes for disabled people across other areas of life, such as education, social participation, housing, well-being, loneliness and crime. 159. The Health and Care Bill, published on the 6th of July 2021, will introduce a new duty for the Care Quality Commission, CQC, to assess local authorities' delivery of their adult social care duties to support the government's drive to improve outcomes across England. Where CQC assessment finds significant failure, the Secretary of State will act to secure improvement. Any action will be proportionate to the issues identified. 160. The National Task Force for Human Rights Leadership published its recommendations in March 2021 for a new human rights framework for Scotland. The report makes 30 recommendations relating to the proposed framework, including the incorporation of the UNCRPD. This will place greater impetus on public bodies to remove obstacles which frequently arise for disabled people in realising their human rights, such as accessing information and services. 161. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, a steering group commissioned by the Welsh Government's Disability Equality Forum was established to consider and report on the impact of COVID-19 on disabled people in Wales. The steering group comprised a selection of disabled people with lived experience, representing DPOs and charities from across Wales. 162. A report has been submitted to the Welsh Government with the intention that this will then inform a refresh of the Action on Disability Framework and Action Plan, taking into consideration the impacts of COVID-19.